It's incredible what this community has done and the things that seemed impossible that became possible through the magic of Rotary. That was why Stephanie Urchik named that theme. She said,
I was in the Dominican Republic helping to install water filters. Two young boys watched as dirty water entered the filter in one end and emerged clean out the other end. I will never forget the first time we stopped the water flow. One of the boys grabbed my sleeve and said, lady, show me that magic again." Our annual theme is the magic of Rotary.
and it is magic what this community has done. When Molly and I first moved to this community, there was no regard for education in the school. There wasn't even a high school here. So local people got together. Later, many became part of this Rotary Club and began to raise money for Becca scholarships. And we had wonderful events. Some of you came to the recent Fandango. And as a result of this kind of work, over 100 have graduated from universities and colleges where there was no hope of that. And the attitude toward education has completely changed. The parents come to the PTA meetings more than any, and we've got the highest rate throughout Baja of any community in the number of kids that both graduate from high school. Almost everyone that graduates from high school applies to college and university. And the highest rate, the highest scores, highest in almost every measure. Now, this is kind of part of the magic of what Rotary is. It's local communities doing things that transform our community. Well, right now, we face a very arduous task. On the left, you see a quote from Paul Harris, the founder of Rotary. And on the other side, you see something we've been doing, these mega meetings that I'll get to a little later in this talk. Now, the Rotary founder, Paul Harris, who created this whole thing, he said, the years ahead reserve for Rotary a most arduous task to heal the wounds of a war-ravaged world, to change enemies into friends, to replace armed struggle with goodwill and international peace. This is the superhuman task we must undertake. Rotary is helping us rise out of the ashes of World War II. Well, right now, that sounds like that could have been said yesterday. Or today. Now, again, we have a superhuman task to replace armed struggle with goodwill and to build peace. This is what one of Rotary's primary objectives. In order to do that superhuman task, we need some super capabilities. We need to be able to be superheroes. What have they done? A cape. Any other answers? And a uniform. Okay. So, yes, that's exactly right. They don a cape and they don a new identity. Now, right now, when we're in a small identity, like take our little community here, when we identified ourselves as, we're the Americans, they're the Mexicans, this and that, we're all separate identities. We didn't have superhuman powers. But when we got together with the local community and we began to identify ourselves as a whole and lift our community, suddenly we had the superhuman powers to actually transform a community in many ways. And we did this by becoming a community. As you travel through our local community, you'll see the Rotary signs. You'll see this sense of belonging and being a part of it. And we see that we do that within cities when we take on the identity of we're all members of the city. When we're members of a country, we find ways to solve problems inside the community because we're a community and we're working together. We take on that identity of whether we're a Mexican or American or Ugandan or Nigerian, whatever it is, we take on that identity and we solve problems. We know how to solve problems within our group. Well, in order to solve these world problems, we're facing a terrible thing. There's not a single, almost no jurisdiction in the world are you allowed to murder people. In almost no jurisdiction are you allowed to rape and pillage. But suddenly at the global level, where we don't yet have an identity, where we have our separate identities, it's perfectly fine to go massively slaughter people, bomb people, kill people. And there is, in fact, even a law against it, the Kellogg-Briand Pact. But there's no system to enforce it because we're not a world community. If we want to take on that superhuman task of solving the problems that are risking the very extinction of our planet itself. I mean, right now we're plagued with climate change and weather that is totally unprecedented. The identity we need to be able to solve our world problems is to put on a new cape and a new identity. Here it comes, the new identity that gives us superhuman powers. Drum roll. The new identity is world citizen, world citizen. By making that little shift in our minds, by clicking to from we're citizens of our separate country and we got to ward off and fight all the others, to that we are citizens of the world, suddenly become people that can solve problems around the world. And Rotary has demonstrated this amazingly well, because Rotary has never been confined to borders. You know, we do projects all over the world, helping people get clean water, wiping out polio, doing other things. I mean, we took a disease that was impossible to conquer, and we've virtually conquered it. And you know the amazing thing? Recently, they've been able to stop the fighting in some of the worst war zones temporarily, while Rotarians went around and did polio shots. And the countries agreed. Rotary has that kind of power to actually stop wars. They've paused wars. Now we need to stop wars, and we can do that when we take on this new identity of world citizen. Now, what does that mean to be a world citizen? The first thing it means is that click in the change of thinking. But the second thing it means is that once we think of ourselves as world citizens, we begin to build the tools and institutions needed to do that. Now, Rotary has had an incredible history of being involved in this. Rotarians, after World War II, when here we'd had, you know, people burned in ovens and concentration camps, and you know, over 50 million people killed in terrible slaughter, and the cities in ruins, and you know, just the devastation kind of things we're seeing in Ukraine, that was all over Europe. We're seeing this terrible challenges. And what did Rotarians do in the midst of this? Say, oh my God, things are terrible. This is just so awful. We're going to be, you know, things are just going down the drain. There's just no hope. No, they didn't do that. They raised their thoughts above the divisions, and they joined together to help create the United Nations. Rotarians were key parts of creating the United Nations Charter and of creating the United Nations, which brought together the nations of the world with the stated purpose of ending the scourge of war. Well, the good news is that they got nations talking together instead of bombing and killing each other. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, it's better to have a forum where we can at least throw words at each other instead of throwing bombs. But has it ended the scourge of war? Not yet. And so, you know what we need to do for our superhuman task? We need to take the next step. The problem with the United Nations is it does not have enforceable world law. It does not have any way that they'll make an order that, okay, or the International Court of Justice, they'll say, okay, it's illegal to bomb this country. You got to stop it. But the nation says, oh, screw you. We don't have to follow you because we're the sovereign. If each individual nation considers themselves the sovereigns, then there's no power to come together and have a law above the nations that divide us. So what we need to do is to put our thinking as world citizens to how do we create governance above the nations that divide us. Now, many people have been struggling for years to get the United Nations to reform itself to do that. Have been saying, there's an article right in the UN Charter that allows for, it calls for, and it hasn't happened, a review conference where we're supposed to be, the UN was supposed to be the first step, and then we're supposed to be evolving these tools and instruments of international law. Well, we have evolved tremendous global institutions that are serving people in so many ways, but we haven't yet created law above the nations that divide us. Now, what is law? Law is a compact between people. It's an agreement. It's an agreement that we agree to give up some of our sovereignty to a higher power so that we can all live better in our community. If we just said it's every person for themselves and I'll get all I can, but when we get together, as we've done with Rotary, and join with others and build things, we can make things work. So the first thing is when we realize that the lawgivers are us. What does almost every constitution in the world start with? What are the words that start our constitution and most constitutions? What are they?
We the people.
We the people. We the people. We the people of planet Earth declare a government of, by, and for the people of this world. Now, that's what a man I made a movie about called "The World Is My Country." Watch it free online at our The World Is My Country site. Just click on the Rotary /Rotary, and you'll get a chance to watch it free this month. But what he said is that, you know, when we can rise, when we the people can create a way of governing above the nations that divide us, we can have the power to fix global warming, to solve all the seemingly impossible problems. Well, how do we do that? Well, it used to be that government had to be, you know, big buildings, powerful countries, militaries, and all that stuff. We have discovered, folks, that military power is an oxymoron. There's actually no such thing as military power. What do you mean there's no such thing as military power? Everybody knows there's military power. No, it doesn't exist. The most powerful empires in the world have tried to beat tiny little countries and can't do it. You know, the French tried to defeat the Vietnamese in this jungle society, you know, for ages. They couldn't do it. Then the United States came in and we took over, and we had the war in Vietnam, and we bombed and we pulverized people, and we had the most advanced technology. We had these, for instance, these very expensive airplanes that made a lot of money for the military contractors. There were people sniffers, and they'd go through the jungle where you know people were hiding, and they tried to detect people so they could automatically bring in bombs that would kill them. What did the Vietnamese do to defeat it? They hung up buckets of urine. Then they went about their way, walking up and down the path. The plane saw the buckets of urine, did all the bombing of the urine, and it killed lots of urine. But we also killed a lot of people. They called it collateral damage. Over 1 million people were killed in that war. And what happened? This powerful empire couldn't defeat them. Military power didn't work. Then look at Afghanistan. The powerful Soviet Empire tried to beat them for years and bombed them and pulverized them and did everything they could, and they couldn't beat them. Then we came in, and you know, for 20 years we bombed and pulverized them. We were supposed to be preserving the rights of women and all this other stuff. And what did we do? We forced them into having an even more disgusting government that was really oppressive of women. We made it worse. We had no power. All this military power and bombs was powerless. It had no power to achieve the objective we were trying to achieve. So what does actually give us power to change? It's learning the tools of conflict resolution, of discussion, of change. You know, we also we're also part of the production team of a film that's called Television Event. It's about how the movie The Day After helped the nation step back from nuclear war in 1983. And Ronald Reagan in that movie discovers, he watched that movie, it turned his thinking around. He went to meet with Gorbachev, and they negotiated the biggest arms reduction that's ever happened in the world. 70% of the nuclear arms were gotten rid of until military industrial complex got a little scared and tried to scare up some more money. But and now we're on that other path, building up more again. But you know, and then Ronald Reagan said, we discovered it's much better to be talking to each other than throwing bombs. And, you know, there are many powerful conflict resolution techniques that Rotarians have been working on. There's Smart Settle, there's a whole range of groups, many of whom are part of our mega meeting team you saw briefly in there, who are working on alternative dispute resolution, solving problems. Well, I think that if we put our minds to it, we are at the beginning of creating new tools for global governance. Take these Zoom meetings. I mean, you know, it used to be that if we wanted to have, in the horse and buggy days, if we wanted to have a government, you know, you had to send people, you know, galloping off in their horse carts or horses to Philadelphia or somewhere, and they had to they had to appoint representatives, and they had to vote for them, because there's no way you could have a meeting really of all the people. But now we can all meet in the global room. We're discovering we get on these Zooms and we have people everywhere in the world talking together, and we can do it, and we become friends. I've got a very good friend, Oswem, who we're collaborating with on these mega meetings. You know, he's on the other side of the world. He's from Nigeria. Together with him, we've been creating mega meetings where we bring the global leaders of Rotary together. We've had almost all the international presidents and others. We've had over 1,000 Rotarians from all over the world listening together to our international presidents at a Zoom meeting and talking together. And by rising above our national identities, Rotary has begun to do a great deal of magic. But if we really put our minds to it, say we had a team of Rotarians that work with some of these incredible advances in technology, to say we created an app, it would, when you're having a meeting and then people start going at loggerheads, we could test it out with Rotary first. They're going at loggerheads, they're against each other. A little thing pops up, would you like some assistance in resolving this? And the people would, then it says, okay, so let's start with each side taking 1 minute to talk about what, not about the thing they're disputing about. We have to break out of that, about who they are and what their vision is for the future. What would they like to see as the kind of future they'd like to see? And then have the other side. You start finding that there's a lot of confluence. We all want a better life for our children. We all want peace. We all want to have adequate food, shelter, and water. We all want to do good. Everybody wants to do good. Did you realize that all these people killing each other around the world are trying to do good? The suicide bomber so wants to do good for inside his group that he's willing, or he or she is willing to die for it, willing to kill himself. And soldiers all over are willing to die and kill themselves to try to protect their family, their community. What if our community were the world, and that the only person to kill is the diseases and the threats to the environment that are destroying our world? Or to be ready in case an asteroid does come. We now have the technology to protect our planet as a whole. What if we can take our sites to that global level, and what if we can experiment with, Rotarians could do this. We could have a team, get a global grant, bring in some of the tech experts, and create an app we could add to Zoom that empowers us to become one, to break down the borders and divisions, and to be able to hear and listen to each other, and to be able to become a coherent group, to become one. And then if you had these, in our movie, Gary Davis calls it syntegrity, they're synergy groups. The idea is not, the old kind of voting was, I half vote for my side, I vote for my side, we all battle it out, we support candidates we don't even really believe in that much because he's better than the other bad guy, we got to stop the other bad guy. And so we're at odds with each other. But if we create a synergistic system of governance, the idea is not who's right and who's wrong, who's the bad guys, but we pick topics like, okay, we want safety for our kids. How do we create safety for our kids? And then you start talking about how do we do that? And we find amazing consensus. We can do it. Once we get past these borders and divisions, we create another topic. We'd love to be able to just have clean water that we can all jump in and swim in and then we can drink. We'd love to have diseases ended. All these things that we want to do, we could do much more powerfully if we create an app to do that.
We humans are an incredibly ingenious species. Why squander our genius on inventing smart bombs to do ourselves in? Why not use our great ingenuity to invent SmartGov, a way we can all interactively and intelligently and heartfully govern our communities, our regions, and our world.
Visionary, you bet, but doesn't every advance start with imagination? When we catch the vision of a people-powered planet, then In this era of instant communication, we'll be able to evolve the tools and the platforms we need to bring the highest and best wisdom of each individual to the task of governing planet Earth.
Once we tap into the sovereignty of the whole, we can unleash the genius of humanity. End war, end oppression, solve global warming.
So there's so many possibilities for Rotary. I don't want to go on for too long, but I will share my screen and tell you a few places you can go where you can find out more. But actually, before I do that, let me throw it open to some questions and comments. Who has some comments, questions, or thoughts they'd like to share?
The real cabal, if you will, that runs our global community is more interested in not helping the world, but oppressing the world. And they control the economy, they control the military-industrial complex.
Let me repeat that part.
And I think, you know, if you polled the entire globe, 99% of the people would want a peaceful, wonderful world where we can all live. But that 1% is the percent that actually controls. So how do you overcome that with this? I mean, there is the balance of power is so skewed. And I'm an idealist. I want to change the world too. But I've seen over my lifetime things progressively getting worse since the Eisenhower era. When I mentioned, you know, for the first time in public, the MIC. So that's what 70 years ago, and we still haven't. So how is this going to change by, you know, a small number of people realizing that we need to make a difference, we need to become world citizens?
Okay, so how's that going to change if a small number of people realize we have to make a difference? Well, and have to become world citizens. Well, it does start. Every change in the world has started with a few individuals. And, you know, one of the, so let me say, first of all, that the big answer is the reason why the 1% keep the rest of us divided, fighting against each other. When you look at it, you'll find that in many of the elections around the world, they've been pushing for hate. It doesn't matter who you hate. It doesn't matter if you hate Black people or green. As long as we can get people hating each other there, fighting each other, hating people here, then that 1% stay in power. But, you know, we were called to undertake a superhuman task. Who is the superpower? That 99%, folks, is the superpower. That's the superpower that can save our world. And they're trying to keep it contained because they're making some bucks on the edge. And they're not even bad people. They would probably love to have a world that worked. And if they could make some bucks making the world work, which they will, once that 99% can express their views. You know, almost every constitution says, as we mentioned, we the people created. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, passed unanimously by the UN in 1948, I believe it was, says that the will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. Well, what's the will of the people? Right now, with all these incredible apps and programs we have no way to measure the will of the people. It's astounding. Now, one of the previous Secretary Generals of the UN called for a global conversation on the UN, the future we want, and the institutions we need to create it. And there was great number of people involved in this global conversation of putting together, and we ended up with these strategic development goals, which are incredible documents. They're great statements of purpose. The people of the world have already spoken. You know, we do want, you know, clean air, safety, health, all the things that we love are in those declarations, but they're only declarations. They don't have power. We, the people, are locked in these boxes of our separate identities. Once we start identifying as world citizens, not just with a few people, but a massive number of people, we can have the power to change it. Now, how do we make it a massive number of people? Well, my personal vision, I'm a filmmaker that made some films. We have Martin Sheen introducing our film. We have Leonardo DiCaprio in our film, The World Is My Country, I said to Leonardo DiCaprio, he was having a press conference about the 11th hour, that humanity is facing the 11th hour of doom, and we need to turn that around. So I said to Leonardo, there's an old movie cliche, you know, the planet is in peril, and it's the 11th hour, and things look really dark, and at the last minute, our hero swoops in and saves the day, saves the world. Who's the hero who's going to save us?
I think there's got to be millions of heroes. That's my answer to that.
The hero is all of us. The hero is all of us. We are all that superhero. And he talked exactly about what we're talking about, how we have to raise our thinking above the nations that divide us. And he gave some beautiful speeches to the United Nations. Look him up. Look up Leonardo DiCaprio talking to the UN. So I think that one of the keys is for us to collaborate. There are many people in the motion picture industry who want a better world. But the best way they've been able to usually to deal with it is by showing disaster movies of all the things we don't want. You know, the day after tomorrow, another one about, you know, climate change disasters. And they're movies to warn us. But in addition to movies that warn us, we need movies to inspire us, movies to give us vision. We need to have kids week after week join, you know, have a new transmedia project with toys and games and video games and everything, where week after week, young people can dwell in a world that works, in a world where we're solving the problems, we're cleaning it up, we're bringing back our environment, where we've ended wars, we're healing the wounds of war. They need to be able to dwell in that kind of future in fiction first, and fiction helps create reality. Star Trek, although some of them are violent, the original Gene Roddenberry vision was actually this group of basically, I would call them peace engineers, traveling around the universe, solving problems, dealing with subtleties, given with how do we bring together the different communities. And that had an incredible impact. So many people, that fiction, most of them, the chief scientists who started NASA say they were inspired to do what they did by watching Star Trek. It changed the real world. The fictional world changed the real world. Inventions that they made in their minds became reality. Because once people visualize those, once they play those games, then they can start creating that reality. So I think the key is for us to get together. You know, if I had the funding, and hopefully we'll get it by the right connections, maybe with Rotary, maybe when I speak at Calgary, we'll come up with some people who will do it. If we could put together a key team that helps create the vision of that future and helps bring Hollywood community, and they're ready for it, to jump in and help create something like this, we could create something that can inspire and visualize the kind of world we want. And you know, so many of us have discovered in our personal lives that if we visualize what we want, it's much more likely to happen. If you're visualizing, oh my God, the world's in trouble, or it all fall apart and stuff like that, you're not very likely to solve things. If you visualize and can clearly picture the world you want, you're more likely to get there. And that's true as individuals and as a world. Well, let me turn to some other questions. I see. So Michael, you said you had a question.
Oh, I wanted to follow up because I'm a kind of a Star Trek going way back kind of guy. Gene Roddenberry, and he was such a visionary, you know, the cell phone, the flip phone with the communicator, and then how diverse the crew was on the bridge. So you had the navigator, Chekhov was from Russia, Sulu was Oriental, you had Scotty from Scotland, and then you had Spock from another planet, and they were all working together. So on a mission for the Federation of Planets, you know, to unite planets and on a peaceful mission. So back to a more topical point is there a chapter of the Rotarians International Peace, and do they have a meeting coming up?
Yes, I'm a member of the Rotary E-Club of World Peace.
That's
and it is a group that brings people from around the world in an e-club to build peace. Any Rotarian or anyone else from around the world can come to meetings. Just go to their link and ask for a link. And also go to, you see at the top, it says mega-meeting.com. You will see a site where we have the empowering collaboration of bringing Rotarians together around the world. And it says, our mission is bringing together Rotary leaders, members, partners, and peace builders from around the globe to foster collaboration, share ideas, and drive positive change in communities worldwide. And then here are some of the leaders we brought together in our ongoing series. John Huco are the Secretary General of Rotary, Stephanie Urchik. Judith Diamond led a team, the Dean of Rotary ambassadors to the United Nations. How can Rotary help lead the world to a sustainable and peaceful future? So yes, Michael, there are many resources you can join into to begin to come together with people around the world to begin to build the kind of future I'm talking about. Theworldismycountry.com. You will get to see how you can sign up for our weekly podcast where we talk about exactly this. How do we build this people-powered planet that we're talking about, where we're the 99% take back our power, take back our control, and begin to save our world. You know, every week we do that, and we've had amazing speakers. Thank you so much. Join us each week and every week on that People Powered Planet and this month, the amazing mega meetings we're having. And let's get together, folks, and take back our power and save this gorgeous, beautiful, outstanding, wonderful world we have.